The gramophone sputtered to life, unleashing a torrent of distorted voices. Not just whispers anymore. Full sentences, arguments, laughter. The fragments coalesced into a horrifying cacophony. Dr. Thorne paled visibly, clutching his chest. It's layering itself, he stammered, his voice strained. Like multiple conversations happening simultaneously within a single frequency. I felt a cold dread creep over me as I realized this wasn't just sound. It was a repository of experience. The recordings grew clearer, revealing snippets of a life. A woman sobbing, a man shouting in frustration, a child's innocent giggle, all mixed with static and the persistent hum. Outside, rain began to fall harder, drumming against the windows like an insistent heartbeat. I ordered Thorne to isolate the gramophone signal, but it was already broadcasting throughout the building. We discovered the signal wasn't just emanating from the gramophone. It was being amplified. The building's wiring seemed to be resonating with the frequency, and as we traced the lines, they led us back to room 307. The air in that space felt denser, charged with a palpable tension. Suddenly, the lights flickered violently, plunging us into darkness for a moment before returning with an unnatural blue hue. The hum intensified dramatically, now accompanied by what sounded like footsteps, echoing just outside the storage room door. Thorne insisted on running a full-spectrum analysis of the sound, hoping to find some predictable pattern that would allow us to shut it down. His readings revealed something impossible. The signal was not originating from any known device. It was as if the walls themselves were speaking. Driven by a desperate need to understand, or at least contain, the phenomenon, I began meticulously documenting everything. We installed directional microphones throughout the building, attempting to pinpoint the source of the signal's amplification. As we gained more data, a disturbing pattern emerged. The voices weren't random. They were responding to our actions. When I moved a microphone closer to the gramophone, the cacophony shifted, focusing on my voice. Dr. Thorne became increasingly agitated, muttering about temporal echoes and psychic residue. He proposed a radical theory, that the gramophone wasn't just recording sounds, it was acting as a conduit for past events, essentially playing back moments of intense emotional energy embedded within the building itself. The rain continued to fall, relentless and unnervingly loud. I started experiencing vivid auditory hallucinations, snippets of the voices seeping into my consciousness. I'd catch myself repeating phrases from the recordings, feeling a compulsion to move towards room 307. Thorne was exhibiting signs of severe distress, his eyes constantly darting around, as if he could see things we couldn't. He insisted on destroying the gramophone, but as we approached it, the voices intensified, almost pleading. The blue light pulsed brighter, and a sense of overwhelming dread washed over me. Suddenly, I realized something horrifying. The recording wasn't just showing us events, it was showing us, or rather, versions of ourselves from different points in time, trapped within the building's echoes. I tried to pull Thorne away from the gramophone, but he wouldn't budge. He was fixated on a particular recording, a young woman's desperate plea for help, repeating over and over again. He knows, he always knows. As I wrestled with him, the room began to distort, the walls seeming to melt and shift around us. The voices coalesced into a single, terrifying chorus. Then, I saw it, reflected in the gramophone's polished surface. Not my own face, but the face of that young woman from the recording, reaching out towards me with imploring eyes. The hum escalated to an unbearable pitch, and Thorne collapsed to the floor, screaming incoherently. As the chaos subsided, I realized the source of the signal wasn't the gramophone itself. It was me. Specifically, my own subconscious, a buried trauma from my childhood, replaying itself through the building's acoustic resonance. The voices weren't external. They were fragments of my own forgotten memories, amplified and distorted by the gramophone's influence. Thorne, still unconscious, began to murmur, "It doesn't want to be forgotten." I understood then. The he in the woman's recording wasn't a person, but a part of myself. I smashed the gramophone to pieces. The voices abruptly ceased. The blue light vanished. The building fell silent. But as I looked around, I noticed something was different. A small child's toy, a wooden rocking horse, sat on the floor in room 307, untouched since its arrival. It began rocking gently, rhythmically, emitting a faint, subsonic hum that quickly escalated into a clear, childish giggle. A giggle eerily familiar to the recording I had just destroyed. I looked down at my hands. They were covered in a thin layer of what appeared to be dried static. As I pulled away, tiny, perfectly formed gramophone needles sprouted from my skin, spinning silently, forever recording something new. The building wasn't just echoing the past, it was creating it, and I was now irrevocably bound to its insidious cycle. The last thing I heard, before everything dissolved into a sea of static, was the child's voice, whisper in my ear.